For this little video, we're going to go ahead and do a recursion example using a while loop. I'm also going to add in a new header file, which you can read about in C++ over here. So this iomanip, and let me go back to, there's quite a few different formatting features that when you're using cin and cout to write things to the screen that you can like set the precision if you're using decimal places. I'm going to use it for this one, set width, if you click on any of these guys. So go ahead and use the reference over here. This is a really nice website to get some example code and see how to use some of these tools. Okay, jumping over here to get into our main program. So for this one, I'm going to have the additional header files. So this is what we used before, that we can have cout, cin, standard. So I don't have to put, if I don't have this using namespace standard, that's when I'd have to start adding all of these guys into any little command that I'm grabbing from the header file. So that avoids having to use all of that stuff. And then this will allow us to use some additional formatting features in that cout. Okay, so starting with our main program, and we're going to start it out very similarly to what we did before, where we will have the user enter some kind of a number, and then the final result, we're going to be finding the factorial of this number. I'm going to make two columns of numbers, so this is just going to be a kind of a header file for those two columns. Let me show you. So before doing anything else, what it is outputting here, so it's not actually doing any calculations yet. So I enter number 5, and as it goes through the loops, I'm going to have one column, 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of walks through the loops, and another column that shows where my factorial has made it up to. So you can see the factorial calculating as it goes through those loops. For the width, so what you're doing is you're going to be counting the number of spaces here. So I have a space before the letter I on here. And if I count up to kind of see how many characters is going on, so I can say 1, 2, 3, and I can kind of see how much space I need between those columns. Okay, so the next little bit of this, I'm going to go ahead and enter the while loop. So for the while loop, this is not a for loop. So I don't have a specific number of times I'm going through this. It's a condition. So this is a conditional expression, and we're going to go until I is equal to less than or equal to number. So the user will specify how many times this will go around the loop. And for any loop, right, everything we're going to do is going to be in between these parentheses. And the new little piece of it is our cout. We're going to have a few more formatting things in here. So instead of just saying I, and then maybe our factorial, I'll do this without formatting so you can see the difference before and after. So I'm going to increase that I one time each time around the loop, and then we have our recursion statement here. So this is I times factorial. So this is going to give us a, 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Okay, so as is, I'm going to have I right next to factorial. There's not going to be any spaces between it. I won't have like two columns of numbers, and it'll be kind of hard to tell the difference between what is going on here. So like this first number is I, and then the second number goes with the factorial, but it's kind of messy. And I could sit here and I could try and put in things like, space, space, space. But But even that, if I run it, I'm not going to have nice lined up columns and rows. So it's a little bit clunky. So let me go ahead and I'm going to use this set width, this little guy right here, to kind of try and get a little bit better. So rather than having it right up next to the wall, I want to have a little bit of a margin here. So I'm going to go ahead and put my first set width and just bump him away from the wall a little bit there. And then instead of just like putting in a bunch of space bars, so I can kind of count over. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can look to see where would be a good spot to sort of center that column underneath the column headers there. So I'm going to go ahead and use maybe 9. And then have my factorial number. Okay, so I'll go ahead and run it with these set. So here we go, set number. So now you can see that I have everything is kind of left justified and it's right underneath my column header and everything is in a row. So anyways, that's a nice little formatting tool that you can start using, but you have to include the iomanip header file in order to use some of these. And for some of your other codes or your project or something, know that, yeah, these extra formatting tools are in there for you to just kind of give yourself a nice professional outlook when you put those together. Okay, so there's the while one. I'm not going to go through the for one specifically in a video. It's going to be very similar to while. Think about how many times it would need to run. So this is a fixed count versus something that is conditional. So instead of having less than or equal to, it's going to be equal to. And that's so yeah, think about how many times it's looping around something to get the desired output. And you can still have like the user specifying how many times it's going to go around that loop, but it's very similar. And I guess comparing the while recursion structure to if, there's fewer lines of code here. This is a much cleaner way to do it, more efficient. And I'm a minimalist. I think if you can do it in fewer words, then more power to you. So this is kind of a nice and neat way to do it. The while loop is pretty nice. We have the recursion happening just right here. Factorial is calling factorial. I guess if you want to see this bounce around inside of there, so it's just going to be stuck inside this loop, redefining what this function is. Let me go ahead and run this with the debugger on. So go ahead and start it, enter number 5, and we'll keep continuing, and you'll watch it. It just hangs out at this line. So it's not jumping back and forth between two functions or having to check an if statement every single time around the loop. It's just going to stay inside of this while loop over and over and over again until this condition is met. So this is a conditional direct recursion. And it will keep going through until we find the end of that thing. Okay, hopefully that is not too painful.